Ladies and gentlemen, we are doing video presentation that aims for a study topic, which is the correlation of screen time to the quality of academic performance of a student. And the presenter will on this for this presentation will be myself, Diez Nelson, Apostol Julian, Balleras Stephen, and Robles Avin. In the continuation of our research presentation, we have enumerated 4 overviews we all need for the said research topic. The first one is the screen time focuses on the amount of time you spend on your electronics. For the first slide, for the first overview, it is focusing on how much time you waste on your devices or electronics. And for the second overview, student would use their technological equipment for online classes due to the pandemic. For the second overview, it is focusing for the student with the technological devices that will be used for the pandemic. And the third one is the study of focuses on the relation of screen time and academic performance. Like what it is focuses for the association between the screen time and academic achievements. And for the last one, the fourth is the study would be observe the negative effect of screen time based on the data gathered from the participants of Lyceum of the Philippines, Cavite. And for the rationale, we have three enumerated rationales. First rationale is add new information based on existing correlation studies and future research on screen time. Second, pinpoint that screen time in today's pandemic, especially in the online classes, should be critically addressed for the health of the students and teachers. For the last, address research gaps and problems for the past studies.
For this part, Miss Stephen Daniel Balleras will be the one who will be presenting it. Here in literature, we will discuss about screen time and the prolonged exposure to the computer screens. The first is screen time is an activity where people stare at their screens for longer periods of time. Number two, longer periods of screen time would affect the children and adults that will stagger their critical abilities needed in school or work. Third, well, time management and sleep would have less effect on students with less screen time as opposed to higher screen time. Next, parents must monitor the amount of screen time students spend on their gadgets. They should monitor the length of time their children does with their computer so they can let them know when to stop and to not overexert themselves. Next, factor of screen time like watching TV, playing video games affect children negatively. Supervisions and reduction of screen time must be enforced. This can also affect the person because they are still digital screens which still emit light and can still cause stress. Third, negative effects like computer vision syndrome and eye strain disorder caused by staring at your gadget screen for longer periods. Eye drops are the temporary remedy for eye strains, but no other permanent solution had been made.
Hello, my name is Avin Nicola R. Robles, and I will be discussing the RL of 7 and 8 and the research gap. Now, in the study, before starting the study, the term correlation is defined as two variables associated with one another to test its relationship. According to Schkober and his associates in 2018, correlation is the definition of two relationship of materials, variables, and so much more associated with one another to observe its their relationship, and etc. Students who used their gadgets for less than 2 hours were not affected by screen time effects than those with more than 2 hours, according to best evidences in brief. Now, in bullet number 8, students who use the screen time, who have less screen time, are not affected to the negative effects of screen time. And then those two students who have more than 2 hours of screen time. Like the negative effects, like less reading comprehension, and less critical response, are one of the factors that negatively affects the students and many more.
Variables. The first variable is length of time. Is the time you spend on the computer screen. Second, distance from electronics. Distance from electronics is the distance between your face and the screen you are looking into. Radiation. Radiation is the energy that is produced by the monitor. Font and type size is the measurement and size of the words you are reading from a monitor. Posture is the way you are sitting on your chair while doing your work, and age is the length of time you are alive in this world.
Research gaps. In bullet number 1, the study would utilize the evidence gap. The definition of this gap is that conclusions from studies are answered but are contradicted from another point of view. Now, the reason why we use the evidence gap is because of there are studies that have the same conclusion, but the goal of this study is to observe it from another point of view. The RLs on the study have their own conclusion based on critical analysis and observation. Now, just as I said kanina, the RLs have the same conclusion and critical analysis and observation. Next is the researcher's decision would be to look for answers in a different perspective. Now, one of the researchers' decision is to look for answers in another perspective, from a different point of view. The study would take a considerable amount of time and resources to make it accessible and let it improve by a long run. Now, considering in today's pandemic, it is no surprise that the research will take a lot of cost and luck to even make it work.
Hi, my name is Stephen Daniel Balleras. I will be the one who will be presenting to you the objectives of the study in our research. Objective of the study is where you describe concisely what the research is trying to achieve. Here is here are those objectives. General aim. This is the general aim of our study. There are three. First one is determine whether the extended period of exposure affects the quality of education in Lyceum of the Philippines University in Cavite. Second one is pin down the time required for students on their electronics. And the last one, after the data is acquired from students, the researchers would compare and contrast the results what the students have learned. Here is the specific aim of our study. Determine the effectiveness of screen time on selected participants, such as students, in terms of learning capacity. Learning capacity is how well you can think. Example, your memory, attention, and speed of processing. Next, physical and mental health. Physical and mental health, the first one is physical health can lead, if kept unhealthy, can lead to a person not performing properly in physical activities. And mental health is also important because without either one of them, you can't perform properly. And This can also affect the way you learn and the way you perform in your studies. Next, identify the time in online class in terms of 2 to 3 hours to less than 5 hours. Because the time you spend in front of your computer can also be the reason why you're not performing properly in your studies. Because prolonged exposures to computer can lead to fatigue and that could affect your way of studying. Next, overall effectiveness of education students learn. We need to determine this so that we can also know if education with this kind of style is really effective to the students.
Today I will be discussing the methodology, its operational terms, research design, sampling technique, data analysis, and so much more. And what was written here, the research design used for this study are correlational and descriptive research. They will be used for online surveys, questionnaires, comparison of relationships, and etc. The correlational research, just as I said a while back, is the study of two variables, whether they are related or not, while descriptive research would opt for a online surveys, questionnaires, and so much more. The population where the sampling size will be gathered from are grades 11 and 12, ages 16 and 18, in Lyceum of the Philippines University, Cavite. The sampling size of the population is 150, and the number of responses needed is 110, based on 55 males and 55 females inside the campus. There you go. And final bullet, in analyzing data, researchers would employ Excel for input data and SPSS for complex computations. Operational terms. Screen time. The definition from Adelantado Renao et al. 2019 is the prominent leisure activity where children and adults spend their time on electronic screens. While the operational term to be used here is the activity where a person spends his or her time staring at digital screens from his or her laptop, phone, and etc. The correlation is definition the study that analyzes the two variables to test whether they are associated to one another. The operational term to be used here is the relationship between screen time and quality of academic performance according to students. The reason why we opt for the correlation is because to study the correlation of screen time and academic performance of students. Academic performance. The definition from Adelantado Renao et al. In 2019 is garnered achievements and abilities of students gathered from schools and competition, etc. The operational term that would be used here is the measurement of the student's academic progress in grades, scores, activities, and etc. So these three are the operational terms, definitions to be used here in the study. Research design. The study will utilize descriptive and correlational research designs. For the descriptive research, researchers would opt for questionnaires or online surveys to participants in the Lyceum of the Philippines University, Cavite. As for correlational research, the two variables, academic performance and screen time, will be analyzed and observed and the relationship between the two. The conceptual framework used here is the IV-DV model, with the dependent variable presented as factors of screen time experienced, and while the independent variables would be the periods of screen time. Next is the sampling technique. The techniques used for this study would be random sampling method and voluntarily sampling method, non-probability and probability sampling. The term random sampling method is any participants that are that can join in our online survey or questionnaires inside the campus. While voluntary sampling is the amount of students that are asked for consent or amount of students who can voluntarily take the questionnaire. The researchers will encourage participants to voluntarily take the online survey, but will not be forced. This would make sense in voluntary sampling, as students who don't want to partake in online surveys, we would understand that. The sampling methods that would be based on past related literatures will only serve as a guide for the study. The sampling methods from past RLs like the Adelanto ones and Spark ones would be serving as a reference for the study.
Hello and good morning, and I'm Julian Apostol. I'm the one who will be discussing sample size, research instrument, and data gathering. The population size of where we will draw out the sample of respondents are 150, and the suggested sample size of the researchers will take on 55 male and female students. The amount of population the researchers that will be using is 150 senior high school students. And among those 150 senior high school students, the researchers will pick 55 male and 55 female senior high school students randomly. The sample size that the researchers came up has a margin of error of 5% and with a confidence level of 95%. This amount of margin of error and a confidence level is known as the acceptable amount. With this, the researchers can provide reliable data results that they will gather from their respondents. The next one is the research instrument. The study would opt for a modified survey from Bedouin and Gabriel 2015 entitled Examine the Perceptions of Academic Stress and its Sources Among University Students, the Perception of Academic Stress Scale. The researchers will formulate a survey questionnaire in order to accumulate data for research. With the help of Bedouin and Gabriel 2015 survey form named Examining Perceptions of Academic Stress and its Sources Among University Students, researchers will use this as a reference and modify its contents to suit the study. While the question in existing survey form would be heavily modified, the essence of the form will remain the same. And next one is the data gathering. The study would use questionnaire surveys and content analysis with modification prepared by the researchers. The questionnaire surveys will be heavily modified to fit the researchers' criteria and will serve as a statistical analysis for the study. Content analysis would also be used in finding other sources absent from variables and objectives given or limited. Critical analysis and investigations shall be used for responses based on the survey. Questionnaire surveys and content analysis will be used in the conduction of the study. There will be slight alteration to the survey questionnaires to fit the criteria of the study. Next is true content analysis. It will serve as the way to gather difficult data. And lastly, researchers will be conducting critical analysis and investigations to extract and formulate the conclusion of the study. That's all for my part.
In data analysis, after collecting the data, the researchers will opt for AQAM that primarily uses computer applications which are MS Excel and SPSS. After collecting the data from the surveys and questionnaires, online surveys, let me correct that, the researchers, us, would use Microsoft Excel and SPSS. The MS Excel would be used for input data and simple computational commands, while SPSS would be focused on complex computations absent from MS Excel. The MS Excel would be focusing on solving simple problems like addition, division, and subtraction, multiplication, and so much more. With just the words to be typed on the input bar, you can expect the results. While SPSS will be focused on complex computations, similarly like in statistics and physics. With the correlation between academic performance and screen time, the researchers will pinpoint the important factors and answer the study's general objectives. Now, after collecting the data, careful analysis and observation from researchers lets us between the relationship between academic performance and screen time, whether they are related or not, and the factors that would affect the overall effectiveness of screen time to the students' health.